Coming up. Okay, so we're live on Facebook now. So hello everyone. Like I had promised you, today is Wednesday, and today I've got the beautiful Gurpreet Randhawa, a lawyer and a partner at Sitka Law Group. Welcome, Gurpreet.
Thanks for having me, Des.
Thank you for being here. So first of all, let's learn a little bit about you. I know some people do know you, but I always come across some that still haven't met you, which surprises me. But tell us a bit about you, yourself.
So I'm a Victoria native. I was born and raised here. So I've spent most of my life here. I am currently a partner at Sitka Law Group. Sitka Law Group is a local firm. We are a full practice firm, so we do a lot of real estate, wills and estates, corporate, and we have about 9 lawyers currently. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's good. So you mentioned you were born and raised in Victoria. So you did your law degree. Where was that?
I did my law degree at Osgoode Hall in Toronto. So I did my undergrad at UVic, and then I decided to get out of Victoria, and I completed my legal studies there. And I decided I definitely wanted to be close to my family, so I decided to start my career in Victoria.
That's great. I'm from Victoria too, so I totally understand. But did you like the cold weather out there?
No. Actually, when I was there, I was really lucky because we didn't really have bad winters. And I was saying, I don't know what everybody's talking about. So I was actually lucky enough to have mild winters, but I know the winters are much worse than here for sure.
Yeah, they definitely can be. Well, I've been sharing the pictures for, like, yesterday, a family member of mine is in Alberta and it's like snowing, and I'm sharing the spring weather we're having. Felt really good.
Yeah, great. I know. A lot of Canadians are definitely envious of our weather.
Yes, definitely glad we have that. So COVID-19 has hit hard in like all of us. And I'm sure you're being affected by it as well.
Yeah, it's definitely impacted every industry. In our practice, we've had to adjust the way that we're doing things. So definitely making better use of technology, having most of our staff work remotely. We are still, some of our lawyers, including myself, are still at the office to deal with real estate and wills and estates. There might be some additional directives from the Law Society on potentially witnessing via video conferencing. The rules on that are still a bit vague. So for certain types of matters, we are still meeting clients in person, but we've definitely limited the number of people in our office. We're asking everybody to essentially hand wash before they enter, sanitizing, centralized boardroom before and after meetings. So definitely taking steps, but making better use of technology, which is good.
Definitely. I mean, that's why we're here today, right? We're able to still meet virtually and have these discussions. So in the legal world right now, what has changed?
So a few things have changed. So my practice is primarily a solicitor practice. So I do a lot of wills and estates, real estate, corporate. I don't do any litigation matters, but obviously a lot of us have heard that the courts are effectively closed to the public. So a lot of civil matters cannot proceed during this time. So we're seeing some delays there. We're noticing clients with more questions about, their leases, because they're having difficulty, especially restaurant owners, continuing to pay their lease when they can't operate. So dealing with lots of questions on lease matters, dealing with a few buyers who have some buyer's remorse. They've entered into contracts that are scheduled to purchase, concerns about whether that's still going to proceed, questions about financing, especially from people who have been laid off, how that's going to impact their mortgage financing. And though we don't practice employment law, questions from employers and employees on their rights, because a lot of employers are looking at laying off and what that means from an employee's perspective, what their rights are. So a lot's definitely going on in the legal world with this whole COVID pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot that I have so many questions for you here today. Like I've got a whole bunch of things I'm going to go through. However, before we go into that, I want to just mention a few things about you. Now, do you speak any other languages? Like there's a lot of people that are always, like that personal touch or want to know if you can speak anything else.
Yeah, this is something that you always put me on the spot about. I do speak Punjabi.
Well, I do, but I'm introducing you to more people today. So I want to make sure like they know कि कुड़ी Punjabi boldi hai, right?
Yeah.
So we got to bring that forward, right? Because
Yeah.
some clients still want that. I mean, a lot of my clients, I still speak Punjabi with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm fluent in Punjabi. Well, I don't know if I can say fluent, but I do speak pretty well Punjabi. Definitely can understand Punjabi. So yeah. Oh,
And you
available.
can really make a difference in people's lives. Like I've had clients that have come to me, and when you normally it's I will refer to you, but then sometimes I get clients that have already met you before, and they have told me on other matters how you've made an impact or given them the right advice when they were totally clueless where to go. So I think having that touch and being able to help other clients makes a difference in their
Thanks
lives.
for that. I know we definitely make an effort to ensure that we take our time with clients, that we're walking them through any matter we're assisting them with so that they fully understand whether it's a real estate transaction, whether it's a will, that they fully understand, what they're signing off on. So I appreciate that feedback, and that's definitely something that we're proud of is just our customer service.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just sharing the screen at the moment. And what I'm going to share right now is this. So Gurpreet, as you know, we do have a lot of healthcare workers that we want to support during this time and give them a tribute for the work they are doing and working hard and putting themselves in the front line for the community. So I also want to mention to everyone that Gurpreet's sister is actually one of the nurses. So Gurpreet, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my sister's an ICU nurse at Jubilee. So she's definitely somebody that I think about daily. One of our frontline workers, along with many others. So this is a great opportunity just to thank all of our frontline health workers for everything they're doing, and that we all just need to keep doing what we're being told to do: the physical distancing, self-isolation, to ensure that we're able to get through this time as fast as possible, and to ensure that our frontline health workers are not inundated with these COVID cases. So general thank you to everyone who's out there.
Yes, it definitely is. Definitely, we need them, and we need everyone to stay at home so we can overcome this and everyone can resume life as normal, right?
I'm sure we're all anxious to get back to normal, so we just got to keep doing what we're being told to do, and hopefully we come out of this sooner.
Well, what I mentioned to you yesterday was like, when this started, I was like, yay, I get to be home, I get to do that. But then, to some extent for the first few days, and now I'm like, I wish I was Gurpreet, I could be at the office, I could work, but that's not happening. I'm still sitting in front of my desk at home, right? Yeah. So,
and I'm only at the office, so we're an essential service, just like you are, but for certain types of matters, we still have to meet clients. But you're right, it's difficult to get used to this. It's just so counterintuitive. We're not allowed to go out and socialize, and it's definitely difficult for all of us, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, you know what? For me, it's been a reflection on my footprints. Like I have time, where am I doing? Why am I doing that? It's just so much going on, right? But we have to be, just gives us time to reflect on our lives, definitely, and reevaluate some things for sure. Absolutely. But yeah, no, it's great. Even my kids at 7 p.m. have been taking the pots and pans outside, and and it's been quite a thing. And I'm glad the community's getting back together in that sense. So we're going back to our chat today. So tell me a bit about any of your clients. Have you come across people that have had struggles with this now?
Yeah, so we haven't fully really noticed the impact yet. I'm in terms of real estate, I'm finding most clients just want to come in sooner rather than later, speed up closing so that they can sign off on all the documents, have possession before things potentially get worse. So I'm noticing a lot of people want to speed up closings. I haven't yet actually had to deal with anybody who might not be able to complete. I anticipate there might be issues with purchasers who did have mortgage financing who maybe have been laid off. I'm not sure if there's going to be an impact there. Haven't seen it yet. the Law Society's issued some guidelines on potentially being able to sign documents via video conferencing. Still waiting on a few further directives on that. In
So
terms,
if we go back to, so like, let's say I've been told that I need to go into self-isolation,
yeah.
but I had closed on a deal, right? Like I mean, I have a binding contract and my closing date is coming in. You're my lawyer and you've got to prepare all the completion documents. Now, what would we do?
Yeah, so so generally real estate documents must be signed before an officer. An officer is usually a lawyer or notary. And in those situations where a party might be in isolation, they cannot actually attend before a lawyer or notary. We can use what's called an affidavit of execution. So somebody who does know the party, whether it's the buyer or the seller, can potentially sign an affidavit confirming that this person is the person selling the property. They have to be at least 16 years of age in order to sign off on that affidavit. So we can look at doing something like that. It's a last resort, but obviously there are individuals who aren't able to leave their homes in current circumstances due to various reasons, maybe self-isolation or quarantine. So we can look at doing something like that. We are receiving further information about potentially being able to sign via video conferencing, which has never been done before with real estate transactions. So just waiting on some further guidelines on what that looks like, because obviously the main concern is avoiding fraud. So waiting some further directives on that. When clients do need to come in to sign, we are screening our clients before they come into the office. So asking questions about, how are they feeling, whether they've traveled. So there are some tools that we can use for sure in circumstances where a party cannot leave their home.
Okay, that's great, to know that those won't be pushed over. Because the other thing, because when you property transactions, it's almost like a chain reaction. Because if you got one client closing and somebody else buying their house and then somebody else buying that person's house, it's like, if one doesn't complete or there's any delays, it's gonna be a chain reaction. It could affect all these deals.
Absolutely, it can impact all these deals. And another common question I get about real estate is, does the force majeure clause apply? And that's a legal wording that essentially provides that perhaps, there is an out of a contract if the parties can't complete due to reasons beyond their control. Unfortunately, that is not a standard term in contracts of purchase and sale. So it's generally not something that can be relied upon. And the same applies to employment context. So that's not a general term you see in an employment contract. So we're really looking at, what can we do to see this transaction through? I'm noticing a lot of real estate brokerages are now using wording regarding COVID. So anticipating potential delays due to isolation, quarantine, or lockdowns, which is good. But in situations where we don't have that wording, we're doing what we can to see that through. I have had some instances where a seller signing a property or selling a property that's a rental, that's tenanted. Tenant was supposed to move out, but now is refusing to because either due to COVID, potentially they're in self-isolation or quarantine, have nowhere else to go, can't go look at places because of the risks associated with that. And just talking buyers through their rights under those circumstances. So we are seeing those types of issues slowly come up now.
Yes, with tenants, especially since the government at the end of March just announced all those changes. So even for one of my listings for showings, the tenant could just flat out say, no, there's no showings. And they're entitled to that, which I can understand for their safety. But for the seller, now they can't market their property the way they wanted to.
And sellers who have already entered into a binding contract and agreed to deliver vacant possession are now dealing with, the fact that they can't deliver vacant possession, are going to be potentially in breach of contract. And looking at the essentially options that are available in those situations.
So what would happen in a situation like that?
Yeah, so if the seller agreed to deliver vacant possession and a tenant is now refusing to move, the seller is technically going to be in breach of contract because they're not going to be able to deliver vacant possession on the completion date. that can give rise to a claim for damages to a potential buyer,
Mm-hmm.
the buyer in that situation. We don't know if that would be considered frustration of contract yet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it can definitely get complicated. We would, look at each situation on a case by case basis. See what the buyer was planning to do with that property. Were they going to move in, or were they going to continue to use it as a rental to try to mitigate against some of those damages? But if anybody's in that situation, I highly, highly recommend that you get legal advice on your options.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. I know what's definitely happening is that with tenants, it's going to be extremely difficult to get and what about people that are going to be buying? Like if you had a choice, like, I'm an essential worker, so I still have to work with clients. So if somebody is buying, because like I have some essential workers, for example, getting job transfers, and life is still going, the same for them to some extent. So we still have to work with them. So if they're buying a home right now, they had two options. One property they liked had tenants and the other didn't. What are you going to suggest to them?
I mean, I think I would give them the pros and cons. So, for example, if you're looking at a property that's tenanted, is that tenant, and you want to move in, is that tenant willing to move out? Or are they kind of at a standstill because of COVID, because they can't go look at other properties, or they're potentially in self-isolation because they're affected? Whereas with the vacant property, obviously you are going to be able to move in right away because it's not tenanted.
Mm-hmm.
So I would look at, the pros and cons of each property, whether a buyer is wanting vacant possession right away, or whether they're willing to work with that tenant until that tenant's able to relocate.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. For the other question I have is courts ordered sales and stuff. Like I heard from what I'm hearing, the courts are closed right now. It's only urgent matters that are being looked after.
Yeah.
So if anything like this would even go to court, right? Like what would happen in a contract like that? The tenant decides not to move, and there's frustration in the contract now, right? So, or like what exactly would happen in that scenario? Would it complete?
Yeah, so it's hard to say whether or not there would be frustration of contract. Frustration is a common law concept. Obviously, the situation hasn't been tried and tested by the courts yet, so we don't know what this situation would qualify. But if a tenant is refusing to leave, a landlord cannot force a tenant out if it's due to COVID. So you're not going to be able to get possession through the residential tenancy branch. If there's serious issues with the tenant, you're concerned about safety, others' well-being, you're not going to be able to apply to court to get an order for possession. If court's only hearing certain, very serious matters. I don't practice litigation again, so I'm not sure what types of matters are being heard and what types of matters are not being heard. But I do anticipate there would be substantial delays currently to try to obtain vacant possession of a property where a tenant is refusing to leave.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, definitely there's going to be those struggles. I'm also working with some clients that are planning to get, like they're already in contracts for new builds. Now, this is going to be one of my questions for you, because right now, what I'm hearing from the seller's realtor, right? Because my clients have bought this property, but the builder is telling them that, look, if the drywall is showing up, the electrician isn't at the same time. So now, or like, vice versa, any trades are not coming in at the same time, and multiple people, obviously, for their own protection, are not working. So it's definitely going to be a delay on their project, which was going on time till now.
Absolutely, potentially. So with those developers contracts, so usually with pre-sales, you're signing off on a developer's contract, not the standard contract of purchase and sale. And developers contracts almost always have wording regarding extensions, and regarding extensions when issues beyond the reasonable control of the developer occurred. So this is very likely delays caused due to reasons beyond the developer's control. And at this point, we don't know how long we're going to have to delay for. And these developers contracts sometimes don't have an outside completion date. So a buyer may just need to sit and wait until it eventually is completed. Obviously the developer's costs are going up. A buyer is maybe continuing to pay rent while waiting for their purchase to complete on a pre-sale. But just with the way that most developers contracts are worded, there isn't really in most situations an out for a buyer.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, there isn't an out. And like a lot of the developers have also, they take full down payment. So they're not just taking a deposit of 5,000 or 10,000. They're taking the full down payment to, if you're signing up to buy that,
Yeah.
when you go into a completed contract there.
Yeah.
But the other questions I had was, what's going to cause some, there's also like financial institutions are gonna, some are only guaranteeing you are getting lending until a certain period of time. And now that's going to be stretched too.
Yeah, usually your rate is guaranteed for a certain period of time, and obviously if you have to extend, your rate potentially is going to go up.
Mhm.
You might not receive that preferential rate anymore. And if at any point between now and completion you potentially are laid off, a lender might ask for an updated employment letter. And if you no longer have that income, you might not qualify for that mortgage anymore. So that's another risk that could potentially arise.
Mhm. Well, what I find is that what we just have to remember is to stay positive. And like the best way that I've been working with my clients is one of my closings, we just moved the date, like we changed the possession a month earlier, just to make sure the courts would stay open. Everything else was, not getting set back. Like, things aren't getting set back. Sorry, I'm getting messages at the same time. I'm getting distracted here. Sorry. So what would be your advice? So when should people be reaching out to you? Like in a normal transaction, and then obviously COVID-19 has hit us. So when do you think that in these circumstances they should be reaching out to you as
My
well?
recommendation and preference is to reach out to me just as you would under normal circumstances. So we are receiving quite a few calls from concerned clients, and I totally understand why. Everybody is just on edge about what's going on. Is my deal still going to complete? We are an essential service, so we are going to stay open. Land titles is an essential service. Land title is going to continue to register transactions. So
Mhm.
proceed as though your transaction is still completing. If you are impacted by COVID directly, where you're ill or you're in self quarantine, then do reach out to me sooner so we can make arrangements for you to come in sooner. But if you're not in self isolation or quarantine, I would proceed just as you would under normal circumstances. And I know that's really difficult because a lot of people just want to get everything signed up as soon as possible because they're worried about shutdowns. But as I said, we are an essential service. We're going to continue to process real estate transactions. So proceed on that basis.
Okay, and when would be a normal time? Like I start telling my clients, like as soon as they get into a binding contract, which is subject to financing, subject to lawyer review, like so many things, right? So review of property disclosure statement, title. I help them out as much as I can, but I usually try to see if they would touch base with you then. But what would you say from you, when is the normal time?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I always suggest sooner rather than later. So while they're working with you to conduct their due diligence, I think that's a great opportunity to reach out to your lawyer to review title, to review the contract, to answer any questions about strata documents. Because as soon as you remove your conditions, the contract's firm and binding. And at that point, there isn't really an out. So if you do after that point decide to reach out to me to ask me a question about title, and you're unhappy with something that you see there, it's too late to get out. So the sooner the better. Some clients do choose to have me involved when we are doing the due diligence, so the title review and so on. Some
Mhm.
actually don't get me involved till after they remove conditions. So they're satisfied with the due diligence. They've talked to you. They've talked to their inspector. They're satisfied with title. In those situations, I typically don't get involved until I start receiving documents from the real estate brokerage and from the lender, and that's usually a few weeks before closing. We typically get in touch with clients then to obtain the information we need to finalize closing documents, and the appointment usually occurs a few days before closing. So it's not
Okay.
your lawyer weeks before closing, it's sometimes even like 2 or 3 days before closing.
And the good feedback I always get from my clients, and one thing I admire about you is if I call you, you're usually fairly good at getting back pretty soon, except
Yeah.
for the one time you were in California, and that was so annoying. Just
I'm so sorry.
sorry, I had to take a vacation. No, just
It was pre-COVID, by the way.
it was definitely, but no, she does have other colleagues. She always leaves me. Get in touch with Sarah if I'm not here. So I do that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So you're usually fairly quick in getting back. It's usually the same day, but
Yeah.
with Gurpreet will return your call, which is great.
We
So
for sure to get back to you the same day.
yeah, so this is like, I just want to remind anyone watching this that we are not going to be like, I'm not saying don't buy a home right now. If you have to and it's essential for you, definitely you can. Gurpreet's open, so am I. We can definitely help. However, we want you to stay home, stay safe, and that should be everyone's priority so we can get over this as soon as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But one thing that I personally am guilty for, and I mean, I'm going to admit it. So wills and estates, Gurpreet, I'm like, I still got to make that appointment too soon,
Yeah.
but yeah. So tell us a bit about that, because this is a time where everyone's reflecting, right?
Yeah.
And saying, what should I do?
Yeah. And we're noticing definitely a lot of inquiries about wills because unfortunately, this is really bringing mortality to the forefront. Thoughts about, do I have a plan in place to ensure that my family is provided for? So definitely something you should consider as if you have children for sure. Regardless of the pandemic, definitely something you want to consider. A will is a way to ensure that your assets are dispersed in accordance with your wishes. And if you do have minor children, it's a way to ensure that there's guardians in place in the event that something happens to the parents while their children are under the age of 19. So you definitely want to have a will in place so you have control over that. And then the other really important piece is incapacity planning. So what happens while you're still alive and no longer able to make decisions? That's where we talk about a power of attorney. So power of attorney is somebody you can name. It can be your spouse who's able to assist you with your bill payments, who's able to purchase, sell, or refinance property on your behalf. And it's, think about, what if your partner is hospitalized? You want to still be able to deal with the banking. You want to still be able to deal with the property. So a power of attorney is a way to accomplish that. And the other is medical decision making. And that's covered in a representation agreement. So who can make medical decisions for you if you're no longer able? So you definitely want to, regardless of the pandemic, have your estate planning documents in order, but it's definitely something that's top of mind for a lot of people right now, just with everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you want to look at, so many different circumstances. And like, most people go even life insurance. A lot of people won't have life insurance or even having your own will. So what do you recommend comes first?
I mean, I think in certain cases it does depend on the circumstances, but you definitely want to have a will in place because it's a way for you to control the distribution of your assets on death. So if you pass away without a will in BC, your money does not automatically go to the government. That's a very common misconception. So if you pass away without a will, it's called, intestate. Then the Wills, Estates, and Succession Act sets out who the beneficiaries are. And under the act, it's essentially it depends on if you have a spouse and children from a previous relationship, but generally your spouse is entitled to a certain portion and the balance is split between a spouse and children. If you don't have a spouse and children, goes up the line to parents, potentially siblings, nieces, and nephews. Most people want to opt out of that scheme. In the traditional nuclear family, most spouses want to leave everything to each other and then the kids. And they also don't want their kids to have control over their money right at 19. They often want to change that age to 25 or 30. So as a will is a way to accomplish all of this.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I want to just mention when I used to work in the financial industry before, and one time I was in my office and I had a scenario like this. An aunt came in with 3 little children, and it's very difficult not only for the financial advisor but the executor of this will now to handle everything. And it's not only that you've got these 3 children to look after, but you've also got the financial responsibility and just guiding them in life now. So many big decisions need to be, and that situation, I remember the executor was not even prepared, wasn't even aware that they were an executor. So I think there is a lot of good advice you can definitely give to your clients that come to you.
Yeah, and I think another common misconception with people is power of attorney. So some think that, okay, if I have bank accounts in my sole name, or if I'm joint on title to a property, my partner can just deal with everything if something happens to me. And that's actually not the case. So you actually have to have a power of attorney in place if you want somebody to be able to manage your finances for you or to deal with your interest in property. It does not that power does not automatically default to a spouse. So definitely something to consider having. And even if you're both joint on title to a property, you can't sign off for each other. So if your spouse is hospitalized, the only way you can sell or refinance the property is if you're a power of attorney for your spouse.
And that includes mortgage renewal. So a lot of people don't realize that even if you're just going to the same bank, same institution basically, and you just want to renew that same mortgage for another term, you can't do it without the consent of your spouse.
Yeah, and or power of attorney if the bank allows it, and if you don't have a power of attorney, then you're looking at applying to court for a comiteeship order, which is a
joint. And joint tenants tenants in common.
Yeah. So there's two ways to be registered on title. One is joint tenancy, and with that option, it's an automatic transfer to a surviving spouse. There's no probate. With tenancy in common, where you hold percentages, if one owner passes away, their share does not automatically flow to the other. It's subject to probate and goes in accordance with the will. Probate is a very time-consuming process. So it's definitely going to take some time to get through that before the deceased owner's interest can be dealt with. But regardless of how you're registered, whether it's joint tenancy or tenancy in common, while you're still alive, nobody can sign off for you unless you have appointed a power of attorney or have a court order.
Or you have a court order. Yeah. Definitely. But see, having all these things all set up and, with you already is what I mean to say, should be all completed, right? And done. I mean, like I said, all of us, this is a time that we can actually reflect on this and kind of decide what we want to do. And, if you're, I think in my age group, and when you have a young family and you have a busy life, not everyone thinks, oh, nothing's going to happen to me, or you don't think it's ever going to be you.
Yeah.
We don't want to believe that it will ever be us. So I'm glad you're able to help. Do you do power attorneys as well?
Yep. So everything that's involved in estate planning, we can assist with. So wills, powers of attorney, representation agreements, trusts. So definitely can assist with all of that. And I often start the process with a complimentary consultation. So I start by giving you some general information. So what I've just touched on now, I go into more detail during an initial consult. We talk about your situation, answer any questions you have. And if you feel comfortable moving forward, we can take your instructions and prepare the documents you require. But I find the biggest obstacle for a lot of people is just starting those conversations.
It is, and especially like nowadays, you also see a lot of partners. You don't see just traditional marriages anymore as well. As well as with children, we also are, Canada has such a high divorce rate as well. So, and there's children involved. So I'm sure you have experience dealing with all these scenarios.
Yeah, and we do, and just doing estate planning for blended families can be so complicated, where we have a husband and wife with children from previous relationships, just talking about your obligations towards your children and how to provide for them and your partner. So it can definitely get very complicated, which is why it's so important to obtain proper advice. But definitely something that you should consider doing if you haven't already done so. Start the process with some general information, and go from there.
For sure. And then other things your law firm does as well is, like you had mentioned, personal injury, but I know you're not doing that, right? But you have somebody else that will look after that?
Yep, we have a team of lawyers who practices personal injury law, so ICBC, non-ICBC matters, corporate, so incorporating, advising proprietors, partnerships, estate planning, probate matters. So very general practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. Yep, that's great. Well, I'm glad you guys are, practicing all those different things at your law firm, and you're out there in the community. We see you do have a presence, which is great.
Yeah.
In our community, and I just want to congratulate you for your success as well, because you're a young entrepreneur. Like when you ventured out and you guys came together to open your own law firm. I mean, that takes a lot of courage to do something like that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely proud of where our firm's at, and we all work really hard, and it's nice to see that there's positive feedback out there. And also, Des, congratulations to you and everything you've accomplished, because how long have you been doing this now?
Oh, me? Oh gosh, feels like forever.
Yeah, you definitely have a presence in the community.
I think so. Right? Try going to Walmart and not running into like 10 people, right? Like, no, I definitely do. And I love what I do. And that's what keeps me going, right? You have to love what you do.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So my kids have found that song recently for me. She's like, I'm on vacation because I love my occupation. And I'm like, yeah, this is me. This is totally me. Right?
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So I just want to end it off and just first of all, thank you for being here today. And I have something that my friend at Sunrise Beauty Salon, Pavi, and myself are giving away pedicure to your sister because she's a healthcare worker. So we're giving those right now I bought some for her to give out to healthcare workers. So we'll be giving that to your sister.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but I know she's in somewhat isolation on her own too.
I don't want to see her right now.
So she can't use it yet, but she has something to look forward to.
Absolutely. Well, that's so generous of you and your friend. Thank you so much. I'm sure she'll be very appreciative.
Yeah, no worries. And the other thing I wanted to just bring up is, where do you think this is going to be headed? Like, do you think we're all headed in a positive direction?
Oh my gosh, if only I had a crystal ball. I think that what I'm hearing in the media is that BC is generally doing well. So we're all coming together as a community to ensure that we are maintaining that physical distancing, where, not meeting those who we don't need to meet, where we're washing hands, we're going to grocery stores only when we need to be going. I think if everybody keeps doing what we're being told to do, that I think we'll come out of this as soon as possible. And it looks like we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. I mean, our numbers look great. I know there's some criticism on how we're tracking cases, but I'm very positive and optimistic that we'll get through this soon. We just got to keep doing what we're supposed to do.
Well, no, I honestly feel that we will get out of this in a positive way, and things are going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and I know with the weather getting better and the long weekend approaching, there's temptation to, go to the beach and like meet our friends. So I'm sure that's something that a lot of people are going to be struggling with, but we just have to get through this time so we can come out of this sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, it's hard because I went to pick up some essentials yesterday and I saw all the Easter stuff out there, and it's tough times for a lot of families right now. We're all just trying to scrape and try to buy whatever is essential and not try to, but we also have to remember to enjoy life. And there are small ways that we could enjoy. Like the other day, my kids were like, what are we going to do? And I said, okay, let's boil some Easter eggs. I remember doing this with some dye, food color. Yeah. And so that's what we're doing now, right? So just some little things that
finding hobbies.
Still have that. Yeah.
And doing Zoom meetings like this to stay connected.
It definitely is great. It's great to see you smiling and being able to connect and hear what's going on in your world.
Yeah, it was great to connect with you too, Des, and thank you very much for organizing this.
No worries.
And yeah.
Okay, so if you guys are looking for a good lawyer in Victoria, that you have any questions that you want to reach out in regards to real estate, as well as wills and estates, and is it employment law, right?
Not employment law, corporate law.
Corporate law. Gurpreet can be there to assist.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Gurpreet Randhawa with Sitka Law Group. Thank you so much, Gurpreet. It
Thank
was
you,
great
Jen.
chatting with you today. Have a wonderful day and stay safe.
You too.
Okay, thank you. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.